Hello everyone, welcome to Tejal Khandelwal Study Center. Hope all of you have revised Plato, Aristotle and Machiavelli through the previous videos. Today's topic is Western political thought, Thomas Hobbes. So let's revise Thomas Hobbes together. Hobbes is the first modern thinker and father of modern political science. He is deserving this designation because his thoughts, methodology, and perspective is in consonance with the features of the modern age. That is the theory of sovereignty or concept of sovereignty and the positivist theory of law. Sovereignty, we see, also emerges as a key feature of modern states. Sabine says that Hobbes is probably the greatest writer on political philosophy that the English people have ever produced. Michael Oakeshott says Leviathan is the greatest, perhaps the sole masterpiece of political philosophy in the English language. Hobbes is a very original thinker. He is the originator of the social contract tradition. Hobbes is also a system builder because he uses the resolutive compositive method in order to link with his political philosophy, and he uses the scientific methodology in order to give the scientific basis to human nature. Hobbes is the one who makes a key connection between political philosophy and scientific thought. So he is the one who bridges and builds that gap that exists between scientific laws and mechanical laws of nature and political philosophy. Hobbes believes in psychological egoism. He says that every action that an individual may do voluntarily will also be guided by self-interest. There is always selfish pursuance in every action that man does. He also believes in ethical relativism, which means, according to him, there is no universal moral idea. It will vary from time to time, context, situation, and specific circumstances. He is a thorough advocate of political absolutism. Why? Because he starts his thought with individual as free and equal, but ends up with creation of an absolute sovereign as a state authority. And if we look at the circumstances in which Hobbes was living, there was a Puritan revolution at that time. There was a civil war in England between Charles I and Oliver Cromwell, where Charles I had been killed. We also see a Spanish attack on England, where this was an undeclared attack that has been there, which leads to an Anglo-Spanish war. So he says, I and fear were born twins because his birth is a premature birth that his mother gives. So this sentiment prevails. So Lasky rightly says, every thinker is a child of times, and the circumstances of England certainly inspired the thought and perspective of Hobbes. But his relevance remains until today. Now let's see the works of Hobbes. The first work is Leviathan, where he talks about the social contract and an absolute sovereign that is needed to be created in order to ensure that anarchy is over. In Der Sieve, he talks about the state of nature and how the law of jungle, that is might is right, prevails. And another work is Behemoth. Influences. If we look at, there are many influences in Hobbesian thought. He is inspired by the social contract that had been advised by Glaucon and Hooker. His human nature is similar to Machiavelli because both give a pessimistic or a negative account of human nature. But he differs from Machiavelli because Machiavelli associates the thirst for power only as a quality of the elites. On the other hand, Hobbes says that this is a universal aspiration that exists in all human beings. The third is the law of nature by Grotius. How he also is critical of the laws of nature, we will see that. Then the concept of sovereignty, he was inspired by Jean Bodin, and he goes one step even ahead of Jean Bodin when he devises the Leviathan as a concept. Mechanical nature of the world. So he is influenced by the scientific thought. That's why he brings in the mechanical nature of the world and how he links it with man, matter, and motion, we will see. So the mechanical nature of the world, that is given by Galileo. The scientific method and materialistic theory that has been inspired by Descartes, and how he uses this in his methodology also, we will see. Then geometry of Euclid also inspires Hobbes. Now, why he is known as the father of modern political science? He is systematically devising the absolutist theory of sovereignty, which means his concept of an absolute sovereign is not only philosophical, but it is a logical culmination of the human nature, the state of nature, the nature of the social contract, and how the sovereign has to be the supreme and the ultimate authority. Fine. So he is certainly a system builder. He links smaller parts into a coherent whole and then devises a final end or culmination to his philosophy. He also talks about the positivist theory of law, which means law which is created by the state, the civil law. Fine. Now, we see that he also has certain liberal elements in his thought and certain elements which are illiberal in nature. We say he is liberal in the sense because he considers all individuals as free and equal. Unlike Plato, who says men differ in their capacities. That's why he says there are different virtues and different schools which are dominant. And that's how his classification of the classes is done in the Athenian and Greece society or the Greek times in Greece. On the other hand, we also see how Aristotle is justifying slavery, but Hobbes says all men are similar, all men are free, all men are equal. But in what sense? In the negative sense. Fine. So that's why even though men are free and equal, but they are egoistic, self-interested and selfish. And he brings an element of consent. This element of consent is not the element of consent that exists in the Lockean tradition. Lockean tradition consent is more true, more substantive, but he brings consent because he says that one individual signs the social contract with other individual. In this sense, there is element of consent for the creation of the sovereign by which all of them are coming together. But it is not like the Lockean tradition. He is illiberal because he creates, even though he starts with individualism, which is an important feature of liberal philosophy, he ends up creating a solution which is an all-powerful absolute sovereign. So for him, there is no importance of civil society to check against the power of the sovereign. On the other hand, we see all modern philosophers who are liberal philosophers emphasize the importance of civil society for freedom, discussion, for debate, for individual, for democracy to thrive. So this is what makes Hobbes liberal in certain sense and illiberal in certain sense. Now, let's move towards the methodology of Hobbes. Hobbes brings the scientific methodology in social sciences, just like Descartes also talks about it. Descartes says that if you want to bring scientific methodology in social sciences, you should first observe the phenomenon, you should break it into smaller parts and then establish a cause and effect relationship between that. So this is what even Hobbes takes it up. He brings the concept of scientific materialism. What is the concept of scientific materialism? He says that everything is matter, which means man is made up of matter and there is nothing like the concept of soul that exists. So we can see that Hobbes is the forerunner of Marx, because even for Marx, everything is composed of matter. And we know that Marx is a materialist in nature. So, Hobbes says that there are particles and all matter is composed of these particles. So, smaller particles create one matter. So, if we see this pen, there are multiple particles in this pen and they have made this pen. So, there is these particles, he says, which are moving, which means they are in motion. And the motion that is there, that is derived by the mechanical laws of nature. Okay. So, the all matter is composed of particles and they move in motion as per the mechanical laws. So, similarly, even man is made up of matter. Human being is made up of matter. It is of living beings. And all this matter is composed of lot of particles and there is motion in an individual which is driving human behavior. So the same thing he applies even in the human nature. All right. The method is known as resolutive compositive method. Now, even though he himself did not term it as that he uses the resolutive compositive method, many thinkers have said that he used the resolutive compositive method. What is the meaning of the resolutive compositive method? So, compositive means what is the parts or what is something composed of, and resolutive means what is the larger effect of the motions of these parts. So, for example, if we take up a watch and if we break that watch into multiple parts and we understand the working of every part in that watch, and then again put that watch back together, we will come to know what was it that was leading the watch to click. So similarly, he applies it in the societal context. How resolutive compositive method in the societal context? So he is creating an all-powerful Leviathan. Why there is need for creation of powerful Leviathan? Because the parts in the society are like that. Who are the parts in the society? It is the human beings who are the parts of the society. How are the human beings working? Human beings are working by the desire and the aversion, by pleasure and pain. And if all parts of a society are working as per the principle of desire and aversion or utilitarian psychology, obviously, what should be the overall effect? It can lead to anarchy. So, what has to be the larger creation of society? That is the creation of the absolute sovereign. So, when we understand the broader concept of the sovereign or the Leviathan, we understand why he creates the sovereign in such a manner, because the societal composition of this human being is like that. Okay. So, we applied this resolutive compositive method even in the societal context. And how the method works? So, we have given an example of a watch. So, if you want to really know how a watch works, break it into its parts, establish what is the cause and effect relationship, and you will arrive at a what? Conclusion. Now, let's understand Hobbes' nominalism. What is Hobbes' nominalism? So, for him, true and false are attribute of speech and not things. For example, I may say that this flower is very beautiful, but maybe you will say this flower is ugly. So, beautiful and ugly is a matter of speech and not a quality of the flower. So, he says that everything that we associate, okay, is an attribute of speech and not thing, which means everything is how we name it to be. So, there is what? Ethical relativism. There cannot be universal something being, a flower being ugly or beautiful. Understood? So, it is a scientific theory. Why? Because it is symbolic representation of the physical world. Now, let's move towards Hobbes' individualism. This is the liberal premises in Hobbesian thought. Now, according to him, individual is embodiment of virtue. Okay, fine. If this individual is who is an embodiment of virtue, which means what should this individual enjoy? This individual, according to Hobbes, should enjoy rights, all barriers to the development of personality of this individual should be removed. And how it will be done? Are all human beings or are all individuals similar in their power capacity? Somebody is strong, somebody is weak. Okay, which means there is possibility that the strong may overtake the weak. So what will Hobbes say? If all human beings in society have to enjoy rights, and we know that human beings are selfish, self-interested and egoistic, some may dominate the others. That's why he says there is need for creation of an absolute state, political absolutism. Okay, so he starts with individualism but concludes towards an absolute state. If this is not done, okay, right, what will happen? If individually left autonomous, there will be anarchy. To resolve anarchy also, we need an absolute state. By creation of an absolute state, pursuit of natural ends of individual will happen, which means the true virtues, the true qualities, everything will be realized. That's why creation of sovereign is in the benefit of the individual. Absolute sovereign is in the benefit of the individual. That's how he starts with the premises of what? Individualism, but ends up to the absolutism. Because if we really want all individuals to be happy, then we have to do things accordingly. Now let's move towards human nature of Hobbes. So let's see his views on human nature. According to him, all human beings are equal. They are born free, they have free will, and they are equal in nature. There is no difference in human beings. Now, it is in what sense? So he says that all human beings are isolated beings. They are egoistic, means they are very selfish. They look at their self-interest. They are self-interested and they are social only for the achieving their own ends, which mean for achieving their own objectives. So Aristotle, who says that man is a social animal or man is a political animal innately, right? Which means he comes to society for fulfillment of his, many other needs. Hobbes differs on that. Hobbes says no, that man is not innately social or good or moral. Man is social for certain purpose. Okay, now he says desire for power is universal in all human beings. There is a restlessness, there is an unending desire for power in human beings. So he says felicity is the end. What is the felicity? What is the meaning of felicity? Felicity, which means achievement of your desires on continuous basis. So all individuals want to fulfill their desire on continuous basis. That is the objective of their life. That is the end. And how do individuals continuously fulfill their desires? What will be the means available? The means is power. So power is the means and felicity is the end. What is it that dominates an individual? It is passion and emotion, not reason or not morality that guides the person's behavior towards others. So this is how he visualizes the qualities of human beings, the basic premises of human nature. Okay. Now let's see. We say that he is a key link between philosophy and scientific thought. So what is it that he makes, how he distinguishes his human nature to scientific basis? So he says that human beings is like other living beings. Like we have animals also. We have maybe plants are also living beings. But we can associate human beings with the other living beings in the nature. So what is it? What is the mechanism that works within human beings physiologically that drives them to do something or prevents them from doing something? So he says that human beings comprise of two things. One is body and second is motions in the body. How are the motions shaping your behavior towards others? So he talks about two kinds of motions. Okay, one motion is the vital involuntary motion. Involuntary, which means it is something which is automatic. You are not doing it purposefully. So what is automatic in your physiological system, in your body? Automatic is breathing, automatic is digestion, automatic is excretion. Okay, and all these physiological motions are driven by heart, which means they are vitally connected to the heart, and how there is circulations in the bodies. It is all these automated processes happen like that. So the first motion he talks about is vital involuntary motion, which is dominated by heart. Heart makes this working. Second motion he says is the voluntary motion. Voluntary motion is driven by the brain, which man thinks and does, like social interaction, like participation in political activities, like how you have to behave. So this voluntary motion, which is driven by the brain, creates sensation in the involuntary motion. ऐसे बोलते हैं ना, दिमाग से दिल चलता है, that kind of thing. Okay, so this voluntary motion, the brain creates sensation what in the heart, and that's how it creates what energy. And what is the energy moving towards? Which means you will move towards either desire or you will move towards aversion. So motions in the physiological systems, right, driven by heart and brain, shape whether you like something or you dislike something. So what you desire, you will do, and what you don't like, you will avoid. Okay. So the whole concept of pleasure and pain, right, is based on this desire and aversion. And desire and aversion are scientific in human beings. This is how he gives the scientific basis to his concept of human nature. Now let's see the statements that he talks with respect to human nature. So he says there is a general inclination of all mankind, a perpetual and restless desire for power after power that ceaseth only in death. And second statement is, will is nothing more than the last appetite in deliberation. So let's just decode this statement. Will is nothing more than the last appetite in deliberation. So what is the meaning of will here? Okay, so will can be, we can have some physical desires, food, clothing. Okay, so there are physical desires for food, sex, other things, and there are social desires, respect, recognition, fame, glory, right? Now, so it is the last appetite in deliberation. मतलब इंसान कितना ही डिबेट कर ले, amongst various values, morals, desires, how much ever you debate between them, what is it that will always drive human behavior according to Hobbes? According to Hobbes, that how much ever you debate amongst various things, man will be naturally driven towards desires, which means human being is utilitarian in nature. Human psychology, it is very important to understand, right? We have to understand human psychology, and it is what? Utilitarian behavior in individuals. So man will always be guided by passion. Man will not be guided by reason. So will is nothing than the last appetite in deliberation is a context of a statement which comes from where? From the human nature. Now, let's move towards the concept of state of nature. Now, do you think the state of nature? So this state is not the political state. Firstly understand. State का मतलब है condition. क्या है? Condition. So condition in nature. आप ये समझ लो, which means there is no existence of society. It is a pre-social phenomenon in Hobbesian view. तो क्या state of nature, which means ऐसी कोई स्थिति हिस्ट्री में थी, ऐसी कोई कंडीशन हिस्ट्री में थी? नहीं. इट इज नॉट अ हिस्टोरिकल डिस्क्रिप्शन गिवन बाय हॉब्स. It is a mental construct. It is a hypothetical situation he is creating so that he can derive the absolute sovereign. So state of nature is a thought experiment. वो सोच रहा था कि ऐसी एक स्थिति है जहां पर ऐसे से लोग हैं, उनका ऐसा बिहेवियर है, वो एक दूसरे की तरफ ऐसे बिहेव करते हैं, तो अब उसका सल्यूशन क्या? That is the concept of state of nature. Got it? So it is a imaginary or a mental construct. It is a thought experiment and it is not a historical description. Okay? So it is a pre-social phenomena. Now, what is the law that is operating in the state of nature? तो society तो है नहीं, तो obviously reason तो dominate करेगा नहीं. So what will dominate? So there is brute force or law of jungle. What is law of jungle? Might is right. Big animal, big fish eats the small fish. है ना? Survival of the fittest, you know. So that is what is operating even in the state of nature. So it is might is right. When might is right, what will be the condition? What is the implication? Anarchy is the implication that will be resulting. Okay? So it is conflict which is inherent in human psychology. Sources of conflict क्या है? Why are people doing conflict here? ठीक है, so he says there is competition for resources in the state of nature. There is also fear of one individual against other individuals, so everybody is fighting for their safety. And there is also some people who want recognition, who want glory, who want to be above others, who want to be recognized. So these are the sources of why conflicts can occur. But he answers one question. If somebody asks Hobbes कि if there are enough resources, you think तभी भी conflict होगा? So Hobbes will say yes. Hobbes will say conflict is inherent in human psychology. You cannot avoid it only. Okay, so he is so certain about the human nature. Now, so if these are the sources of conflict, जिंदगी कैसी होगी? तो life of man in state of nature will be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. Okay? Now, so is there something like a distinction? What will be the condition? What will be implication of this? Is there something like a distinction between right and wrong in the state of nature? No, we cannot distinguish between what is right and what is wrong in the state of nature. Why? Because passion and emotion जहां dominate करेगा, तो फिर how things will reason out? Reason कहाँ है? जहां man प्लेटो के सेंस में जब समझे, जहां पे इंडिविजुअल is pursuing journey towards wisdom, वहां इंसान में रीजन है ना? वहां एक्सीलेंस है, वहां परस्यूएंस ऑफ ह्यूमन परफेक्शन होगा. लेकिन जहां पे ब्रूट फोर्स वर्क कर रही है, वहां पे क्या सही और क्या गलत होगा? ठीक है? सो देयर इज नो डिस्टिंक्शन बिटवीन राइट एंड रॉन्ग. एंड ही सेज देयर इज नथिंग कॉल्ड जस्ट एंड अनजस्ट. द आइडिया ऑफ व्हाट इज जस्ट and unjust come from where? The right idea of just and unjust come from what we understand as justice. यहां तो कोई लॉ ही नहीं है, तो जब लॉ ही नहीं है तो जस्टिस कैसे होगा? क्या जस्ट, क्या इनजस्ट, अनजस्ट. ओके, सो फॉर हॉब्स justice is a byproduct of a law, and if the law is law of jungle, you cannot expect any kind of justice to be prevalent in any system. You got it? Now, is there any private property? So no, there is no private property also that is existing in the state of nature. Even though he says that there is natural rights of right to life, liberty and property, but there is nobody to protect this. which means it is a wholesale liberty, then what is the sense? Okay, so there is nothing like that also that is existing. If there is no protection of private property, whose property will be protected? Okay, now there is no industry also, there is no growth, prosperity, happiness, because it is only a situation of anarchy. And there is no what? Art, no literature. So even if Locke will say that in the state of nature there was natural rights, Hobbes will say natural right to life, liberty, property is like a wholesale liberty in the state of nature. So it does not have any value or sense, right? So he says it is a wholesale liberty and there is no protection. So we understood what are the reasons for, what is the sources of conflict, what is the condition, how is life like in the imaginary construct of the state of nature. So what are the reasons for conflict? First is desire and aversion in human nature. So we are seeing how he is linking human nature all the time. Desire and aversion create, it leads to pleasure and pain. Okay? So what we like, what we desire, what we get pleasure out of, we will be attracted. And what we don't like, what gives us pain, our physiological motions will also move away from it. Okay? Now, self-preservation. So why? See, there is a lot of insecurity. There is a lot of fear. We saw no fear for safety. So man is guided by two elements, fear and insecurity. Because of which this insecurity, I don't know when my life will be taken away, when somebody will come and kill me, when somebody will snatch my property, when somebody will do something wrong toward me. If there is anarchy like situation, how can you expect a surety? Right? So what becomes a very important, everybody wants to preserve themselves. So self-preservation becomes very important. And if you want to preserve yourself, then you are ready to do anything that will create a threat for your life. Ruthless competition and conflict of interest. Okay, there will be ruthless competition because everybody wants to protect their own resource and other things. So life becomes a struggle for power in the state of nature. All right, now let's talk about laws of nature and natural law according to Hobbes. Before moving to what Hobbes says about natural law, let's see what is the concept of natural law in general. So, natural law is rule of moral reasoning, which means we do something which is beyond self-interest also. Okay, so it is like a moral reasoning that is existing according to all the theorists who talk of this natural law that is existing in every individual has reason. Every individual has some set of morality that is enabling them to do their or guiding their actions. Okay, so that is natural law or law of nature. Fine. But Hobbes says actually there is nothing like law of nature. There is nothing like natural law because it is a theorem of peace and counsel of prudence. Because the natural law was like the law of jungle, where might is right. And when there is no enforceability and only might is right, and law of jungle and brute force, how can we protect anybody? So he says that morality and self-interest are same for him. Okay? Law of nature, rule of reason only to maximize self-interest. So there is two ideas he says, summum bonum and summum malum. What key terms? Summum bonum, summum malum. So he says there is nothing like, as Aristotle and Socrates says, idea of good. Aristotle used to move towards eudaimonia, happiness, है ना? तो Hobbes says ऐसा कुछ idea of greater good नहीं होता है. Every individual is only seeking to prevent evil. So there is no idea of greater good. There is only the idea of prevention of greatest evil. So aim of life is avoidance of summum malum, which means greatest evil, not summum bonum, that is greatest good. Now, theory of social contract. So we see how logically and consistently, first talking about scientific methodology, then talking about scientific basis of human nature, Then talking about state of nature also, linking it with human nature, he devises what should be the nature of the social contract that will be devised. So according to him, in this contract, there is contract of each individual with every other individual, which means I also know that if we both don't come together and if there is no sovereign that is created, then we might just end up what? Destroying each other. So everybody is doing a contract with everyone. And need of contract, obviously, he has already established the ground. Need of contract is because I know I am also selfish and that other individual is also. So all men being selfish, egoistic, self-interested, contract is very much needed for ensuring peace, security, well-being, safety of everyone. Okay? Terms of the contract is each individual with other contract and surrender their all rights to third party, which means third party who is not party to the contract. It is somebody who is beyond that. Fine. So this party, if I become party to the contract, which means I will have to agree. But sovereign is a party which is not party to the contract. Okay. So rights and power of sovereign, there is no limitation. There is absolute power and becomes sovereign in nature. Okay. Now, let's move towards the concept of what? Just remember that in the social contract, the individual transfers all natural rights to the sovereign. That is, right to liberty, right to property, but not right to life. Because sovereign has been created for self-preservation of individuals. Because everybody was feeling insecure in the state of nature. That's why who has been created? Sovereign. तो sovereign का basic origin ही preservation of life के लिए है. तो sovereign के पास ये हक नहीं है कि वो किसी की लाइफ ले ले. अगर sovereign किसी की लाइफ लेना चाहे तो that individual can have the right to resist the sovereign to protect that right. So there is one exception, that is right to life, which is not transferred to the sovereign as per the social contract. Okay? Now, so let's move towards the next concept. So he says, sovereign is like a mortal god. He calls it as Leviathan. Okay? And dictates of sovereign will be the laws. And there is a single representative wills. In the state of nature, everybody's will was conflicting with the others. But in the creation of this sovereign, there is a single representative will. Understood? So has the sovereign acquired power or we have given him the power? We have given him the power. The sovereign does not seek to acquire power. So in this context, there is some element of consent that Hobbes is trying to create. कि sovereign को तुमने बनाया है तुम्हारी सहूलियत के लिए. Sovereign को खुद sovereign नहीं बनना है. तुमको अपनी लाइफ को प्रिजर्व करना है तो तुम सब मिलके सोवरीन को बोलो कि हमारी लाइफ प्रोटेक्ट करो. और एक बार जब आप सोवरीन को बोल देते हो कि हमारी लाइफ को आप प्रोटेक्ट करो, फिर उसके पास एब्सोल्यूट पावर, फिर दैट सोवरीन विल नॉट बी अकाउंटेबल. क्योंकि फिर अकाउंटेबिलिटी मैकेनिज्म क्रिएट की तो अगेन अदर इंडिविजुअल्स विल हैव डिफरेंट नोशंस, ग्रीवियंसेस. इज दिस अंडरस्टूड? नाउ नेक्स्ट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सोवरेनिटी. How do you understand sovereignty in the modern sense? So many concepts before understanding what a thinker says. First, understand what is the most general understanding of the idea, because all of you have understood concepts in more modern sense. So before we move to what Hobbes will say, I will think and explain what is the present understanding of sovereignty. So present understanding of sovereignty is the idea that it is an unrestricted and supreme authority of the state to frame and administer law. Okay. Therefore, state power as well as sovereignty become identical in the modern sense. Now, if we move back a little in the ancient time in the Greek society, right? So, there is no concept of sovereignty, though supreme power was given by Aristotle to the state because state was driven by rule of law. Okay. Now, and Machiavelli tried to, but he was not very successful in establishing the concept of sovereignty. He wanted a unification. He wanted one, unified Italian state that should be, unified in that sense. But he was not able to really create all the conditions or list those conditions that are needed. Fine. So it is Jean Bodin first who talks about this, okay? And Jean Bodin says sovereignty means supreme power over citizens and subjects which is not to be restrained by law. So it is unrestrained by law, right? Limitations on the sovereign. Is the sovereign limited by something? Yes. According to Bodin also, the sovereign is limited by law of God, morality also, moral norms also, international law also, law of the nature also, right, which means reason as well, fundamentals of constitutions also, as well as property rights. So Bodin puts certain limitations on the sovereign. Now let's see what Bodin talks about as the characteristics of a sovereign. So he says a sovereign is permanent and perpetual, which means it is not a temporary authority. It is permanent authority. A sovereign is absolute, which means in a specific territory, there cannot be another sovereign. There's only one sovereign, absolute in nature. Okay? Now, so no person can question, and that sovereign is free from any outside control and can rule without consent. That is the meaning of absolute. Undelegated, which means original, which means the sovereign does not derive power from either God or church. It is original. Okay. It is inalienable. Inalienable means cannot be separated or divided. Even if sovereign tells for some time I'm going, king is saying I'm going somewhere, I'm giving you the power, but that does not mean that power will become that individual's power. It remains with the sovereign only. Okay. Next is unrestrained by law, which means who has the authority to make laws? Sovereign. So to declare peace and war, all these, to impose taxes, penalties, all powers are with the sovereign. Now let's see how is Hobbes creating sovereignty. Now, so we'll address it one by one. So who is absolutely sovereign and all powerful? It is the Leviathan. Leviathan comes from the social contract. Okay. Is Leviathan party to the contract? No. Who is party to the contract? All individuals signing with one another are the party to the contract. Okay. So when we say the sovereign, is it natural? Which means if we say sovereignty is equal to state, is this state natural? No, it is a creation. The very idea of social contract, which means state is a artificial creation. Unlike the other tradition earlier, where Aristotle, Plato says state is natural. Okay. Now, so party to the contract? No. Does sovereign have obligation to natural law? Yes. On one hand, it has obligation to natural law, reason, morality. But if the sovereign violates, can anybody challenge it? No. Is it open to challenge? No. So it is not substantive in that sense. Then, why so? Because the sovereign does not make any promises to anyone. Powers of the sovereign to declare war and peace, levy taxes and impose penalties. What about customs? According to Hobbes, customs also attain the status of laws. right? When they are willed by the sovereign. Thus, church will also become department of state. All right? And dependency on the sovereign will. Because who will decide the customary thing? Customs are driven culturally, which is driven by church. So, church also will become department of state. Now, so customs also at the will of the sovereign. New sovereign, can a new sovereign be created? No. Individuals cannot make a new covenant among themselves and cannot create a new Leviathan. They do not have the right to disobedience or rebellion. The authority is absolute and irrevocable. Otherwise, it will again lead to what? It will again lead to the state of nature. Now, Hobbes on law. So, let's see what he talks about law. So, he says law is not counsel. Matlab, law is not advice. Law is command, which means it is the authority to tell someone to do something. That is law. So, law cannot be considered as a what? Counsel. Law implies only command. Alright. So, he talks of three types of law. Law of jungle existed in the state of nature. Then, there is also law of the nature that he talks, which means when there is dictate of reason, right, prudential calculations of an individual, which makes them to come together. And the third is the civil law. Civil law, which means created by sovereign, by authority. So, he is a propounder of the positivist theory of law, and he says that if law is not backed by enforceability, it holds no worth. Which means if you cannot give rights to an individual if you are not able to protect that. So, he says, covenant without swords are but words and of no strength at all. So, merely saying something, okay, or merely creating a law without enforceability mechanism holds no relevance. They should always have a backing, okay, where punishment can be done, where some action can be done. Now, next. So, on political obligation, what is political obligation? Political obligation, which means what is the basis of obedience of a state? Why are we obliged, or what is our duty towards the state? Why should we obey the state? That is political obligation. What is the basis of obedience of citizens towards the state? So, what do you think will Hobbes say? Will this political or this obedience be limited or unlimited? According to Hobbes, it is unlimited political obligation. Otherwise, what will happen? Again, anarchy. And again, what? We will return back to the state of nature. So, to overcome anarchy, we created the sovereign. And if sovereign is created, we all have a duty to obey. And whatever the sovereign says, authority is irrevocable and absolute. Okay. So, there cannot be any question on the sovereign. So, unlimited political obligation. Actually, political obligation or the duty we have should in general sense be seen guided by both legal aspect as well as moral. So, look at it as a very broad concept, political obligation or duty. Duty is not only guided by legal basis that we are citizens, it is also moral basis that is there. Okay? And he lays the basis that there should be an unlimited political obligation towards the sovereign or the state. Now, let's see what are his views on liberty. So, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought says that if there is a law, then we cannot enjoy liberty. And one school says that if there is no law, how will liberty be protected? So, we have one as a negative school of liberty, negative liberty, which means no restrictions by the state, and positive liberty, which means that state should create some enabling conditions so that everybody can enjoy liberty, right? Now, let's see how is Hobbesian view. So, what do you think Hobbes will say? Hobbes is what kind of person? Hobbes says Hobbes is an individualist, which means Hobbes favor that individual should be respected. Individuals' rights should be protected. But he knows that individuals are also selfish, they are also egoistic, they are also self-interested. What to do in such a circumstances? There will be anarchy. So, Hobbes creates absolute sovereign, absolute state. He leads towards political absolutism. Now, how will he devise liberty? So, Hobbes will say, liberty is where law is silent, which means individual can enjoy liberty in those spheres where the sovereign is not made any law. Because in those spheres where sovereign has made any law, the will of the sovereign will prevail. This is the meaning when he says liberty is where law is silent. Because why sovereign has been created? Sovereign has been created with broad purpose. It is for your preservation of life. So sovereign will anyway not do anything which is against your liberty. If you submit your liberty, you will be secured. But on the other hand, in some areas where there is no law that has been created by the sovereign, your individual will or your individual liberty can dominate. But जहां जहां sovereign ने कोई law बना दिया, वहां पे आपकी liberty subservient होगी. This is the context when he says liberty is where law is silent. So he's very logically connecting the creation of sovereign, the need, what it implies, and how liberty has to be realized in this context. Okay? So, end of sovereign is preservation of life, security and peace. Fine? Negative liberty, man is free only where law is silent. Individual has liberty where sovereign has not forbidden anything. Okay? If clash between individual and sovereign, individual is subservient to sovereign. Why? Because for him, liberty is not an inherent value. You enjoy liberty only when sovereign has come. Before that, though, you were living in state of nature. You were living in anarchy. Then how will you be happy? ठीक है? So that's why he says that liberty is not an inherent value. It is not a fundamental value. You can be free only when you have the sovereign who creates laws for you, enabling condition, who ensures your peace, your security. So that's why his thoughts might appear contradictory, but they have a deeper and more meaning. All right? Now, so let's see, there are those who support Hobbes and there are those who criticize Hobbes also. Okay? So Oakeshott say Leviathan is masterpiece. Clarendon says Leviathan is based on lewd principle. Whitehall says full of poison. And Cowley say Hobbes is a monster. Now what is the relevance of Hobbes? So whenever state assumes too much of power, okay, we say Hobbes has come into picture. It's like surveillance state. When state do draconian laws, okay, to ensure security in the larger perspective, then we say Hobbes has come into picture. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. If you enjoyed, then like and comment. Thank you.